Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, hope you're doing well. Okay, let's do a quick recap of week 14 of the marathon train so far. Week 14 is also the third week of the 4-week race preparation train block. Okay, so Monday was just 10 kilometers of recovery on grass at Bankstown City Sports Complex. I felt quite okay after the gold marathon pace long run on Sunday the day before, so no dramas really. Tuesday was some intervals at Saltpan Creek Reserve. It was 5 sets of 600 meters with about 70 seconds jog recovery in between for about 14 kilometers in total for the whole run. For some reason I felt fairly quick but also controlled. It's probably because the weather has been fairly cool this morning and I'm also getting close to peak fitness in these couple of weeks. Wednesday was a 22-kilometer medium long run at Saltpan Creek Reserve. I wore my red pair of speeds this time just to see how I felt, even though I should be wearing the newer white pair of speeds to save the legs a bit and reduce the risk of injury. It does feel like I have to try a bit harder to stay focused, and the shoes are quite worn out after all, but I still got the run done fairly well I guess. Thursday was another 10-kilometer recovery run plus some speed work at the end, so that was 6 100 meter strides. Not on grass this time since it was raining quite recently, so I just went to Saltpan Creek Reserve again. I was a bit worried about doing some strides with my Triumphs on the slightly wet surfaces since the grip isn't that great, but yeah, fortunately I didn't slip or anything. Friday was a 10-kilometer recovery run around Saltpan Creek Reserve again, and also Riverwood as well. I felt mostly okay there. Would have preferred to run on grass, but again it's too wet I guess. Saturday was supposed to be a tune-up race for anything between 8 to 15 kilometers, but yeah, there's nothing really scheduled around the areas that day, so I just opted for Rhodes Park Run. It wasn't rain that day, but the surfaces were still a bit slippery and wet and also puddly from all the recent rain, so it was a slightly modified course in terms of the start and end, so on pavement rather than the usual grass area. Anyways, I was feeling rather fit and ended up going a bit too quick for the first 2 kilometers. Then I just lost focus once I got caught up in all the twists and turns around the roads area between the 2nd and the 3rd kilometer, and just kind of faded for the rest of the way back. I ended up finishing park run in about 17 minutes and 10 seconds. The modified course is a bit longer than usual, so according to Strava, I went through 5k in about 16:56 or so, which is still PB, but looking back, I wasn't that tired afterwards, so it was a bit disappointing as I definitely could have paced that much better. Maybe go out a bit slower or something, and also to get to park run earlier to warm up properly. But it's all good. It's still unofficially a 5k PB, but I'll give it a proper shot sometime later on when I get the chance I guess. And then finally, Sunday was supposed to be a 29-kilometer long run, but ended up being a 32-kilometer long run with David, who invited me to join his workout at the Bay Run, and I figured why not since I haven't been there in ages. I did a 2-kilometer warm-up to meet him along the route, and then we started the run together, which I think was supposed to be about 30 kilometers at steady pace or something, but not quite a marathon pace. I haven't run at Bay Run in a few years now, so it was quite nice to revisit and see a few new changes and upgrades to the route. I almost forgot how nice and scenic the route is, but also how crowded and narrow it can get at some parts. There's a few short hills and some rough surfaces here and there, but otherwise it's a pretty flat, well-paved route overall. It was also great to run and work with David this time. I don't think I've done a long run workout with anyone else for this entire 18 weeks of training, and technically if I was doing a solo long run like I usually would, I probably would have done it a bit slower than I did this day, mostly because I ran a quick park run the day before. But I noticed that having someone alongside me made the run feel much more manageable and enjoyable, especially at that pace, and also added a bit of accountability as we sort of paced each other and kept each other in check as well. On another note, my watch had Kane's lock for pretty much the entire run. I think it was fairly cold that morning, so the heart rate sensors must have struggled a bit. The watch said I averaged 185 beats per minute for the entire run, but I'm pretty certain it wasn't that high. And for some reason, I did also end up getting numb toes at around the 27-kilometer mark with about 5k's to go. And I was very tempted to call it quits at the 30-kilometer mark when I started to lose focus and I felt like I was fading, but also I didn't really feel like walking back the rest of the way, so sort of pushed through and just got it done. I think overall, it was one of the most solid long runs I've done in a good while, especially with the lower perceived effort for that pace and distance. So definitely a confidence booster, and I think David must have felt the same way. It's crazy because he's much older than me and he still keep up super well with relatively young runners like myself, so huge respect to that, and I hope I'm also able to run fairly well in my later years too. Anyways, the total mileage for the week was about 116 kilometers. Fairly solid week overall. I would have preferred to run on grass for those 2 recovery runs on Thursday and Friday to save the legs a bit for the weekend runs, and maybe wait a tiny bit easy on Sunday, but it's all good I guess. While I'm here, let's quickly talk about longevity in running. So firstly, I'm currently 28 years old and I have been running for about 4.5 years now as of late August 2024, having started this whole running thing in early 2020. Since then, I've logged about 13,500 kilometers of running mileage, with each year's total mileage being a bit more than the previous. I run anywhere between 0 to 120 kilometers a week in training. I've owned about 17 pairs of running shoes and retired about 8 of them so far. I've gone through a handful of different training programs and blocks ranging from 4 weeks to 18 weeks for distances from 5k up to the marathon. I've also run 5 marathons so far, I've done many park runs and races and so on. In my first year of running, I was still going to gym fairly regularly and maintain decent strength gains, so I was able to just get on the treadmill and run 3 times a week, and then eventually go outside on the road and pavement and do the same for about another year or 2 without much setbacks such as injury, though I did end up quitting the gym late that year. Over time, I added a bunch of things to my routine outside of running, such as foam rolling, mobility and flexibility work, and strength training. And then inside of running, I've done many different types of runs as power training, training, added drills and dynamic movements to my routine, and even stuff like hill sprints and strides. I also paid a bit more attention to my diet and nutrition and put in some extra effort to find proper fitting shoes as part of my shoe rotation as well. And all of that was mostly because I figured it'd be the right thing to do to improve and get stronger as a runner. I'm not an expert in any of those things, but I feel like it's the least I should do for like general health purposes and like reducing risk of injury. But over the years, I've still picked up a bunch of minor injuries anyway, most of which took a few days to recover from, such as like a slight calf strain, some sore Achilles, and maybe some rolled ankles. And even some of those were definitely preventable if I wasn't being silly doing training, but it is what it is. I also had one calf tendon injury, which took about like 6 to 7 weeks to properly recover from. But other than that, nothing too major or super serious so far. I'm not sure how many days I've intentionally taken off in total, but when I get sick or after some time trials or races, I might take a few days up to like an entire week off. But apart from that, I haven't really felt the need to take like too many days off of running in general, whether it's for like physical, mental reasons or whatever. I do feel like I've become a better runner over time, but honestly, sometimes I still worry about my own longevity in the sport. For example, I think many of us would have heard about the claim that running is bad for our knees. Like, fortunately, I haven't really had any knee issues as part of my running journey so far, but at the same time, I actually haven't run for that long to really know. Running can be quite tough on the body in many ways, and injuries are practically an accepted risk in this sport. Even though there's probably studies and anecdotal claims that running isn't that bad for you in moderation, and given that you do plenty of strength training, mobility, recovery stuff, and so on, I guess it's still hard to know whether that's true on an individual level, unless we really monitor our body and get it checked up regularly by a professional, for example, which I don't really do, but probably should. I think I read somewhere that genetics also plays a role in how resilient our body is, how it recovers, and also how well it can handle like mileage, for example. Personally, I could tell there was a high risk of injury when I was training for my last few marathons across the past year or two, simply from the high mileage and therefore more wear and tear on the body. I think it's almost a given and something I've accepted as part of the process, hence why I've invested more into like strength training, mobility, recovery, running in grass, rotating my shoes, and so on. At the same time, I feel like I might need a proper break or like a reset soon, both for physical and mental reasons at least. Training for Gold Coast was already kind of intense, like having never done 120km weeks before, and then trying to get fit for Sydney Marathon just like 10 weeks afterwards is a bit much, I think. So later this year, I'll probably run lower weekly mileage and see where I can get the most bang for buck, and maybe actually do cross training for once, or spend a bit more time on my running for more speed or mobility even. There's definitely many older runners out there who've run for much longer than I have, for like 10, 20 or 30 years or even more, and many who I've met in person or even like ran alongside, some who were just an absolute beast in the early days and just stayed in the sport for a while, or quit back then and then returned at some point. There's also some old runners who really just got into running fairly recently as well. Some of them have also experienced a variety of injuries, whether it's an old one they've overcome or a current one they're nursing, but otherwise they're still out there getting it done, whether it's like recreationally or like somewhat competitively as well. In many ways, it's amazing and inspiring to see the range, age-wise, that running allows for, and it's always great to hear the stories of the running journeys so far and also their future aspirations and goals. But anyways, if you had to ask me, Rob, what keeps you running after all this time? I think the simplest answer to that is that I was able to in the first place, and I'm still able to for now, I guess. I feel like it's a bit of a privilege to be able to run, in my opinion, so I'm always grateful that I'm able to run, and it feels great to be able to move your body and take it where you want to go, like to run fast, to run slow, to run for a bit, to run far, to run uphills, to run downhills, on pavement, on grass, on trails, and so on. And it's especially nice to be doing it outdoors as well, around nature and all. I think it also keeps you feeling fairly fit and active as well. It might not be the safest or the lowest impact sport out there because there's still the usual risk of injury, especially given the like repetitive movements on like hard surfaces like pavement. And apart from the expense of shoes, I feel like it's not too expensive to run, at least from my own experience. It's also fairly convenient for me, and I can get straight into it not too long after I leave the house. Though of course sometimes I do have to commute to where I want to run, but that's usually alright. But to expand further on what keeps you running, another aspect would be chasing improvement, progression, and performance. It's really the idea of like being able to run further and faster, and getting better at something tends to keep us going, but that usually means I have to train for it. I think if I wasn't trained for anything at all, I probably wouldn't run as much. Even in my early days of running, where I wasn't as informed, aware, experienced, or even like exposed to all the hype of running as I am today, I think I still strive to be able to run further without stopping, for example. But nowadays I tend to train for a specific race, as it's nice to build up for it, experience the ups and downs of training, and then celebrate the training efforts on that specific race day regardless of the outcome. I don't think it was ever really pure raw running without rhyme or reason for me. So if you ask me to just go for a run alone, without my watch, without any rough idea of how quick I should run or like how far or even why, I don't think I'd enjoy it. Like, I think some people do, but I don't think that's for me. Training has definitely made me approach running in a somewhat structured way, such as like planned efforts and distances, mileage for the week, train blocks, races, and so on. For me, that generally doesn't take away from the experience of enjoying running, but rather enhances it, as it gives me something to work for, to look forward to fail and even overcome, and so on. Even if I wasn't training for my own goals, at the very least, I feel like I should be training for something. Like, for example, I'm currently training for the 2024 Sydney Marathon, but I don't think I'll be going for a PB there. I was initially tempted to try and aim to go as quick as I did for Gold Coast, or even like quicker, but I'll likely be sticking to like the 3 hour group or a bit quicker instead, like to help pace and like support fellow runners to sneak under that 3 hour mark. mostly because I figured I enjoy it more this time around. And beyond that, even when I don't feel like chasing my own goals, I'll likely still be trained to either stay somewhat fit or at least be prepared for races where I'm pacing and supporting others to their PBs. And then of course we also have the many other social experiences that come with running as well. It's great to run with like familiar faces and meet new people, catch up with them or like see them improve over time, train or race with them, be part of running clubs, or even like explore new routes together. I'm still mostly a solo runner during the weekdays due to schedule, but it's always nice to catch up at a park run or like a long run on the weekends when I get the chance to. On another note, the Advanced Marathoning book, which is the book I've been referencing for this whole 18 weeks of training, has a chapter titled The Older and Wiser Marathoner. Definitely worth a read sometime, but I'll go through and summarize some of the notions that it talks about. So it goes through the idea of like slowing the rate of slowing. So some of the stuff it talks about for older runners include like VO2 max decreasing as you get older, which can be due to like decreased max heart rate, but also from avoiding or like doing less high intensity running as we get older. It's not a bad idea to maintain interval workouts as part of your training. There's also body composition changes like increased body fat, especially from decreased hormone production. So there's an importance of like retaining muscle mass through extra strength and resistance training, staying active throughout the day, and also like having a high quality diet. Some older runners also experience reduced stride length, which is like due to the reduced power at the ankles. So the idea is to get like stronger calves and Achilles through like strength and mobility work, plus like hill reps and strides. And also the importance of like increased recovery time and how we should try to do all the little things right, like for example stretching, mobility, sleep, diet and nutrition, and also modified training to allow more recovery time in between like workouts and races. And some of the other keys it talks about to successful masters marathoning includes like good planning, common sense and discipline, where good planning encompasses like adjusting your training to accommodate your body's capacity to handle stress. Common sense is all about listening to your body and noting that the signals can be especially different compared to younger days. And being older likely means there's a smaller margin of error, so it's better to be safe than sorry if you feel like an injury or an illness coming up. And also spending more time to warm up and do like dynamic movements and drills before your runs. And then finally, discipline is about like making the right choices even if you can't be bothered or they're not as fun as you'd like for example regular flexibility, mobility, core stability, strength training, and really listening to your physical therapist, for example. Even though I'm still a relatively young runner, I think a lot of these ideas make sense and should be applied anyway. And finally, the other thing I want to talk about is like age-grade performances. Aging takes a physiological toll on the body, but it can also affect us psychologically and mentally too, especially for competitive runners. To train and be dedicated to the sport over the years, but not feel like we're improving much, or even feel like we're falling behind, it isn't really a great feeling at all. I feel like I can still improve my running performance for a good while longer, especially given that I'm still relatively young. But there'll be some point in the future where aging simply just takes over and I find that I can't really improve much further. I think if you're fairly competitive about performance, then age-graded performance and percentages make more sense to refer to rather than comparing your performances across current and old or even like against younger competitors. Personally, I'm not too competitive, but I'm happy to refer to like PBs I set yearly rather than from all time, and also remind myself that although circumstances can change, which affects performance, hopefully my reasons for running in the first place won't have changed too much. Also applying the concepts as mentioned earlier, such as like maintaining intervals and doing more strength work, helps you remain a strong and successful runner in the many years to come. Longevity in running has always been in the back of my mind. Sometimes I wonder how long I'll be able to run for, but really I have no idea. So maybe it's best to just train smart whenever I can, really listen to the body, enjoy the sport for what it is, whether it's alone or with others, stay positive, and keep moving forward. I won't be able to run forever, but I still can for now, and that's what matters, I guess. For all of you guys out there watching this video, myself included, I really hope we can be part of and enjoy the sport for a long time and experience many of the great things it has to offer. There will definitely be ups and downs as part of the whole running journey, and that's what keeps it interesting and worthwhile. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. I really gotta go now, so yeah, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.